One of the single most profitable sectors in crypto over the past year has been the GambleFi sector, with projects like Rollbit pulling in tens of millions of dollars in monthly revenue over parts of 2023. And early in 2023, we saw RLB, the token for Rollbit, go up over 2,000% in price. Since then, however, the hype has died down quite a bit, with Rollbit down almost 50% from its all-time high. My question is, was it all just a fad, or are we going to see a bigger wave in the GambleFi sector hit at some point in 2024 or 2025? To find out, I decided to do a deep dive in the sector, re-examine the revenues of projects like Rollbit, jump into the fundamentals of the space and its overall trajectory, as well as I'll be doing a deep dive of my top 3 GambleFi projects that I jumped into last year. Okay, so as mentioned earlier, one of the biggest projects in the GambleFi space is Rollbit. And for me, they're basically an overall gauge of the sector's potential. And previously in 2023, they had insane revenues. I'm talking tens of millions of dollars in revenue they were pulling in every single month, which was crazy. Last time when I did an update last year, their monthly sports betting revenue was around 5.7 million. Their 30-day crypto futures revenue was 8.1 million. And their 30-day casino revenue was 25.5 million, totaling up to around 39 million a month in revenue back then, or 473 million in annual revenue. And their market cap at the time that I did that video was around $367 million. And back when I made my last video, I said that those two numbers didn't match up. To compare, Celestia is valued at $19 billion fully diluted and annually makes around $36,000 from its fees. Meaning the market is essentially valuing Celestia at 527,000 times its revenue, while on the other hand valuing Rollbit at less than its revenue. But my argument back then, or like my bearish case for Rollbit, was maybe this was just a fad. Maybe the market's saying, hey, yeah, you guys are pulling in a lot of revenue monthly right now, but we think this is just a fad that's going to fade away. And really, you're going to just kind of like fade into obscurity as time goes on. And we've seen this happen a ton of times before. You'll have an app take off in the crypto space, printing millions of dollars in revenue, and then it ends up kind of like losing its luster. People stop using it, it fades away, and the revenue sources dry up. We essentially saw this with Friendtech last year, where for a couple months it was printing millions of dollars in revenue, only to kind of lose its luster and die down. So let's fast forward 5 months to today and take a second look at Rollbit and what they're doing now. Previously, sports betting revenue was 5.7 million, and today's sports betting revenue is 19.4 million. So that one at least is quite a bit higher today than it was 5 months ago. Crypto futures revenue was 8.1 million back then, and today it's 5.5 million. So that one's gone down a little bit, but it's pretty comparable. In the big one, last time their 30-day casino revenue was 25.5 million. And today, fast forward 5 months, it's a staggering 38.8 million. Overall, they went from a total of $39 million in revenue a month back then to 63.8 million a month in revenue today. Obviously, Rollbit's revenue sources haven't died down, and it's quite a bit higher today than it was even 5 months ago. Annualized, that's $765 million a year that Rollbit is pulling in as far as revenue. And their market cap today is just $398 million, meaning the market is currently valuing them at around half their annual revenue. So not even valuing them like at the revenue or less than the revenue. Now the market's valuing them at half their annual revenue, which that to me is just wild. That's crazy. My base case for Rollbit last time when I did my last video was that Rollbit should be valued at around 10 times its revenue. Is kind of like a base case in my brain. That's what I was thinking. Today, that would mean Rollbit would be around $7.6 billion in market cap, which would be about a 19x from here. And again, that was my base case. My takeaway is either there's like a huge disconnect between the market and Rollbit, like for some reason the market is just missing this somehow, or maybe it could be that the market sees these things, but just simply doesn't believe it. Unlike a normal DeFi protocol, because Rollbit's revenues aren't on chain, we can't actually just go on chain and verify that they are making as much as they say they are. We can, however, verify their burn numbers. A part of like what Rollbit does is they say, hey, here's the amount of revenue we're making. We're going to take 20% of this category, 10% of this category, and I forget the other one of this category, and we're going to burn that percent of revenue. We're going to like buy back and burn our token with that revenue. And since their token obviously is on chain, we can see if they're actually going and buying these tokens and burning them back at the correct proportions that they should be doing. And we can see that they are buying and burning close to $100 million annually worth of their token. So either they're literally throwing away $100 million annually just to keep up the charade and fake the massive amount of revenue that they're saying they're making, or you have to assume that they actually are making as much revenue as they're saying. My best guess is that a lot of people are on the sidelines because the revenue for Rollbit is almost too good to be true. It's just such a large amount of money, and comparable to a lot of the biggest projects in the space, it just doesn't make sense for most people. However, if those revenues are legitimate and the market is able to realize it, then those prices should correct really quickly. Gambling industry is taboo, so it's really easy for people to kind of jump to conclusions that they're doing something shady because it's, gambling. It of course pays to be skeptical in the crypto space, but for me, I'm leaning more towards that these revenues are likely legitimate. I've talked with competitors like Kaneko who have an incentive to be skeptical of Rollbit and understand the space firsthand. And they seem to believe that Rollbit is legitimately making that much revenue. So I have 3 different tokens that I'm buying to take advantage of what I believe is a huge mispricing by the market that will eventually be corrected. But really quick, I'm opening back up the Obsidian Council today, March 4th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And I'm only opening it up to the first 100 new signups. If you don't know, the Obsidian Council is my private community where I share monthly research, including my entire portfolio and updates when I buy new projects. We've had projects like Akash, which is up over 1,300% since sharing it. Projects like Pendle, which is up over 776% since sharing it, Lake, which is up over 1,500% since sharing it, and a ton of others. We also have the Airdrop guide, which some members were able to make over $26,000 just last year from airdrops, covering their entire membership for literally decades. I personally was able to make over $20,000 from airdrops in February alone. Quick disclaimer though, that came after months and months of work. Plus, there is just a ton more that comes with the membership. There's a link in the description to join the waitlist, and you'll get an email at 5 p.m. Eastern Time when it goes live. I'll be closing the group back down once we hit the 100 member cap. Last time we sold out in just a few hours, so make sure to jump in quick if you're interested. If of course you're watching this video later and you miss out, you can always join the waitlist and sign up next time we open back up. Okay, so the 3 different tokens that I'm buying to play this narrative. First off, I of course have a position in Rollbit. Remember, I personally believe that Rollbit could correct to about 10 times its revenue in a full-blown bull market. If it were to just do a 10x in price, that's life-changing money, but I personally believe it could do 20x or more, depending if the revenues pick up in a full-fledged bull run. Now, if Rollbit does take off and does just even a 10x from here, the market is going to do what the market loves to do when a project goes up. It'll look around for the next Rollbit or the Rollbit killer. So I've also positioned myself in 2 small but really solid competitors. The first is the project I mentioned earlier, and that's Kaneko. As you can see, it's really similar to Rollbit. It's got great UX and UI, but it's much smaller at a market cap of just $9 million. Again, as a reminder, Rollbit's around $398 million. That's a 44x from here, and like I said earlier, I believe that Rollbit is severely undervalued, so the potential or the upside potential for Kaneko, I think, is even maybe higher than that. First off, it's on Solana, and Solana, in my opinion, will be kind of like the Binance Smart Chain of this cycle, which that's not to compare Solana's tech to something like Binance Smart Chain. Those are 2 vastly different. Solana, in my opinion, is much better than something like Binance Smart Chain. What I mean by that is I believe that Solana will be a hub for retail investors in the same way that last cycle Binance Smart Chain was a hub for retail investors. I think that chains like Coinbase's Base and OKX's X1 will also be hubs for retail as well. My point being, with Solana's growth and more capital entering that ecosystem with cheap fees and a lot of users, there's a potential that we could see a massive increase in revenue for something like Kaneko if we enter a full-fledged bull run. In my last video when I shared Kaneko, it was around 22 cents. Today, 5 months later, Kaneko's around 92 cents. But with a fully diluted market cap of just $17 million, it's still really tiny with a ton of room to grow. I did an entire interview with the head of business development on my podcast, Steady Lads. If you want to listen, there's a link in the description of this video for Spotify, Apple, etc. My third position would be Winner. Winner is quite a bit different from Rollbit and Kaneko in that it's taking a much more on-chain approach to GambleFi, creating an open platform for different developers to come build their gambling apps on top of, allowing the market to choose the best app or interface, and allowing Winner to benefit by being the underlying foundation. Think of this similar to something like Apple's App Store. It used to be that anyone that made a cell phone pre-installed which apps would come on that phone. Apple decided rather than they deciding which app should be on that phone, they would open it up so any developer could build a killer app for their phone. The best apps stuck around and the bad apps died away. That's sort of the business model envisioned for something like Winner. Currently, they have just 2 apps built on top of them. First one's called Just Bet and the second one's called Degens Bet, with a third one in the works called 0x Sports Bet. And last time I talked about Winner, they were just on Arbitrum and had a market cap of $28 million. Today, their market cap is $87 million and they've expanded to Solana as well. Total volume since the launch of their first platform in May 2023 has been around $5 billion. I really like the concept of Winner in that, like, it's not just one platform. It's not just them deciding what the user's gonna like best, but it's open to a ton of experimentation, a ton of building, and potentially because of that, a ton of different revenue streams. I've tried to reach out to Winner to schedule a podcast episode. I haven't heard back yet, but if you're interested, make sure to go subscribe to the Steady Lads podcast, and if I'm able to get it, then it'll pop up there eventually. Overall, it seems like the GambleFi narrative isn't currently really popular within the crypto space, but the fundamentals are really strong. I expect at some point in 2024 or 2025 for this narrative to take off again and reach new all-time highs. As always, none of this was investment advice. None of this was me telling you to go buy these tokens. You should always do your own research, and blindly copying YouTubers is one of the worst ways to invest on the planet. Even if I gave you just pure gems after gem after gem, you would still probably lose because you don't know what you're doing. You don't have the same conviction, and you don't understand fundamentally like how to invest in the space. So you should always become educated as an investor in the space on your own and really genuinely understand what you're doing if you want to succeed long term. If this video is helpful, make sure to hit that like button. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure to hit the subscribe button and the little bell next to it to be notified each time I release a video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.